So when we're talking about destructive objects, we're really talking about the term destructive object, and that is something we need to define. To come to the destructive part, we really first need to define what an object is. An object is any type of information which might be either structured or unstructured. And typically when people think about objects, they're thinking about structured objects. They're thinking about either files or messages which have a form. And that form is something we refer to as the format, which defines their specification. That format defines, how we identify what an object is. It also defines, its structure. It identifies its content, and so on. So structured objects are something we need to investigate closely, but we also have to think about the unstructured data, or as we are referring to it today, as dark data. And dark data is nothing more than an unstructured object, or an object with an unknown structure. So if you think about structured objects, you're really talking about, in terms of examples, you're talking about things like email messages, documents, multimedia files, executable content, mobile applications. All those things are structured in a way that a machine can programmatically parse and understand. Unstructured data is not like that. Unstructured data is either log messages which don't really have form, custom text, and even API calls from one machine to another can be unstructured in a way that we can't really investigate today. So getting from unstructured to structured is what we do with processes, things like reverse engineering and analysis. And the reasons why we do that is to investigate the complexity which is hidden behind these terms, both structured and unstructured. The complexity part is really important to understand because there's many different properties of this complexity. So when we're talking about complexity, we're really thinking about, first and foremost, how big are these objects? Are they small? Are they large? Are they infinite in size? All of them need to be really investigated to figure out what they are. Do they hide any private information? Do they hide any malicious content? All of these things need to be checked. So size is one component of that. How they're structured, their format is another. And the problem with the format is there's so many of them. There's thousands and thousands of different file formats, and depending on the use case, people usually invent their own. So being able to investigate every piece of content means being able to support many different file formats, in thousands, quite literally. The problem is only, worsened by the fact that these objects interact with each other. They can host each other. So when you're talking about their layout, you're really talking about, how many different layers of objects can be contained within a message, for example. To give an example of that, we'd be talking about an email message, right? An email message is a structured object. It starts with a header piece of information which says, I'm an email. This is a person who's going to be receiving this email. That email obviously has content, that's the body of the message, but it also has an attachment, like a file a person has attached. And that file is then complex. You have a document which has an image within it, which is also animated, which might also have code like macros and scripts which animate that image. So all of these parts of an object are parts that we need to investigate for malicious content. And the reason why we refer to objects as something which can be destructive in nature is because that email message might be a document which within its code is capable of launching ransomware attack, for example. And ransomware is a perfect example of a destructive object because in terms of being destructive, we're really thinking about the value an object is taking away from an organization. So that is either business interruption, threats to business continuity, or even just temporary interruptions in your day-to-day operations. All of those might be destroying the value an organization is bringing to their customers and to the market in total. To solve this kind of problem, security as an industry has been adding solutions which are monitoring objects in their essence. First and foremost, we start with thinking about, how does our business interact with the outside world? To solve the problems of this interaction, we created things like firewalls, which block destructive objects from entering the organization. Then we added additional layers when the objects are actually within the organization to track them, so things like SIEM solutions, for example, are capable of knowing where the objects are flowing through the organization. And also, at the end of the day, somebody needs to work with these objects. So they end up on an endpoint, and then we design solutions which are protecting the endpoint. And in that terms, we have both, traditional signature-based solutions, and also we have the next generation machine learning-powered solutions. All of these things make up security, and security is really there to prevent destructive objects from entering and creating damage within the organization.